everyone, and welcome to China EVs and More, where my co-host Li Shufu and I will go over the week's most important and interesting news coming out of the China EV, AV, and mobility sectors. What Li and I discussed today is based on our opinions and should not be taken as investment advice. For those that are new to the show, welcome. And to our loyal listeners, welcome back. We ask that you please help us get the word out about this podcast to other enthusiasts. And of course, tune in again next week. My name is Tu Li. I am the managing director at Sino-Auto Insights, a global management consultancy that helps organizations bring innovative and tech-focused products and services to the transportation and mobility sectors. I write a free weekly newsletter that we pull many of our discussion topics from. You can sign up for it at sinoautoinsights.com, which of course I encourage you all to do. Lei, happy Singles Day. Can you please introduce yourself?
Yes. Good morning. This is Li Shufu, your co-host, former chief editor of China Auto Review, and this is episode number 141. Mad Dash would be the theme going forward leading up to the upcoming Guangzhou Auto Show, which is sort of like the final party of the year for China's automotive market. And until year end, it's going to be a mad dash no matter how you look at it. Right now, as we speak, we have two models being launched, or the Avatar 1.2 is being launched. The Dongfeng E-Pi is a new brand out of Dongfeng is being revealed. Zeekr just officially announced their IPO proceedings, and they teased the 007 or 007 sedan. We just heard of the numbers from CAAM. What else, right? Polestar had their Polestar day yesterday. It's this tsunami of
Yang Wang, Feng Chongbao, and BYD.
BYD, the Feng Chongbao 5 was launched a couple of days ago.
It is amazing the pace at which BYD, not China EV Inc., BYD, two brands, Yang Wang, within a month of each other, right?
And speaking of the 011, I just saw a push for GUA 01. They're giving 8,000 RMB 8,000 savings on one of the packages. So, this is a model that was launched, what?
A month ago.
Less than a month
ago.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like end of October, and they're already putting out promotions.
Now, we know that Singles Day, there is normally a lot of money put on the hood. And for those that are new to the automotive sector, traditionally, that's kind of an informal saying. When an automaker puts incentives on a vehicle to sell it, they call it putting money on the hood. And Shri, there's always normally money being put on the hood, but this is also in defense of the price war and the new products, because each of the EV makers do not want the new brands, the new products from current brands to get any breathing room. So as things are announced within 6, 8, 10 hours, you'll hear or see marketing from a competitor in order to try to get eyeballs away from the shiny new object. And so I think the mad dash that I had written in the description is really appropriate, because with the Chinese economy the way it's going, it is going to be really, really cutthroat for the rest of December, or for the rest of November and December, to boost those Q4 sales numbers.
Yeah, the mad dash gets that. It is a mad dash every year during this time, but this year, because of the price war and also the fact that if we look at the numbers, the export of EVs are increasingly taking more share of the sales numbers. So you combine all that, right? So
here's an indication of that, Lei. CNEV Post, a friend of China EVs and More, they had posted that 41% of the 1,100 or 1,200 vehicles on display at the GZ Auto Show are
only
going to
41%
are going to be NEVs. So
I'm surprised there's still 59% are not EVs.
I know, right? So And I tweeted as the EU and US has a hiccup for EV adoption.
I mean, we had a good comparison. You tweeted that LA Auto Show, which we're going, is lame. You compare that with London Auto Show. It's like,
yeah, there's literally one unveil at the LA Auto Show.
One or two, maybe just one. Yeah.
One that we know of so far.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you put Tesla raising prices in the title. I think we talk a little bit about that, and I mean, to me,
they're trying to creep back some of that margin that they lost when they cut prices.
Yeah, I think it's also more or less a sales tactic that they were played throughout the year.
Yeah,
and this is a reverse rabbit hat. So you pull a rabbit hat, but this is like putting the rabbit back into the hat. Right?
And for traditional car guys,
yeah,
normally automotive or OEMs don't willy-nilly increase, decrease price like this. But in the case of the China market, in the case of Tesla, they're changing the game.
Yeah. And the asterisk on this price raise is that only two of the long range models, and they weren't raised by a lot. I think it was like 1,500, 2,000 RMB.
1,000, 2,000 RMB. So
yeah, a few $100s. And to me, one, I don't think it's meaningful in terms of margins, helping with margins. And two, it still sounded like, if you look at it, it's still a price cut because the other models, 2 or 3, with the 3 and Y, they stay the same. But the long range prices was kind of raised, right? I mean, depending on how you look at it, other than the sales tactic, I don't think it's going to have any meaningful to the margins.
I'm curious to see what Tesla's numbers will be for Q4 for sure. And another thing that I think that's worth mentioning is that traditional automotive, they're not normally launching new products in a Q4 timeframe. So for these companies that aren't really looking at the calendar, they're just launching as fast as they can. This could be to their detriment from a product standpoint and a sales standpoint. So especially as they launch these vehicles, but are they ready to sell them right away? And this is where kind of the challenge comes in. So,
you spoke a very good point because that's where Li Auto excels. And maybe BYD, I think, are the ones that are, as well as Tesla maybe, but Tesla is not launching new products like BYD and Li Auto are doing. But Li Auto specifically, right, referring to the Q3 earnings, I think one thing that really they're doing well is launch a model, deliver in high volumes. I mean, the Neos and the XPengs, they're right. They look at that and they're like, we need more work to do.
A good example of that, Lei, was back when Steve was alive, Steve Jobs. They would have two major conferences, one in January called Macworld and one in August called the WWDC, or the Worldwide Developers Conference. And that was when they would launch new product. And they would announce it, and then Steve would always say, this is available on our website tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so, again, in traditional automotive sense, one of the reasons they got into racing was because when you won, win on Sunday, sell on Monday. That's what they used to say in the traditional automotive space. And let me separate this out a little bit because BYD, to me, stands alone. The complexity of their manufacturing dwarfs a Tesla, dwarfs a Li Auto, because Li Auto is effectively building the same car, just smaller sizes. Whereas BYD, now that they're leaning into Denza, leaning into Fangchongbao, leaning into Yangwang, they're manufacturing, the number of part numbers that they're managing is a lot more. The number of factories that they're managing is a lot more. And so I'll give you an indication. One car might have 3 trims. So if we think about that, so any car, like a Chevrolet Corvette, there might be a Chevy Corvette, there might be a Z01, there might be a Z06, there might be a ZR1. And so these are effectively different cars, mainly the same, but some of the engine components might be different. Some of the exterior components might be different. And then you get into colors. So it's not just 3 different trims, but then we're talking about 15 different versions, or depending on the color of this vehicle. So think about that from a factory standpoint. So there could be white seats coming in, black seats coming in, gray seats coming in, and then the exterior, same thing, all these different colors. And so you have to appreciate BYD's ability to launch and then ramp right away.
Yeah, and that was, Li Xiang's point he made about excelling at all 9 areas across the 3 categories, right? That he mentioned. And funny that he said comments on Huawei, right? Because in the phone industry, there's kind of a mentality that you don't mess with Huawei. That this was like a meme going on. And Li Xiang basically said, 80% learning from them, 20% respect, and 0 complaints, which is kind of another way to. I don't know if he was being serious, but the way that the competition with Huawei and the rest of the smart EV startups. I mean, we've seen all these kind of beefs, right, on this AEB stuff in the last few days. But yeah. Right, BYD is bar none on all of those points that Li Xiang mentioned.
And then we're moving into really uncharted territory for the Li Autos and the XPengs who have launched MPVs. Now, Li Auto has only been a premium SUV manufacturer since its existence since it started in 2014. And do you think that there's a lot of I have an opinion about this, but do you think that there's going to be overlap with the customers? Okay, I can either get a Li 8 or a Mega, so it'll test how good their marketing and marketing research is.
Yeah, I agree. But at least the price point is different, right? Mega is going to be over 500,000
right
RMB. I mean, Li Auto, among all the startups, I think is the easiest to predict where they're headed because they have a good financial and cost discipline. They have a good roadmap. We know where they're launching in 2024. They have a consistency in terms of these volumes. So they're the easiest to predict.
That's also because they have the cleanest, market strategy. Stay in China and win China, right?
That's what makes them a little bit different. So next year they'll have 4 EREVs and 4 BEVs, including the Mega. And the other 3 BEVs are all launching in the same year.
Yep.
I mean, for the legacy autos, they're probably launching 1 model per year, at most 2.
And that's overwhelming to them.
That's the mad dash, right? And 2025 is really a magic, I guess a magic number.
Because we won't begin to see whether we'll hear rumors, you and I will hear rumors, but we won't begin to see whether the XPeng Volkswagen Group, the Stellantis Leapmotor cooperation really works until 2026.
Right. While these newer and with better features and competitively priced models are being launched every single day.
Yeah, it's a stark contrast, at least to the United States, where you and I could probably name within the next 30 seconds the significant EV products in the US market. And I can't think of too many new products that are entering next year that would move the needle from a volume standpoint in any significant way. I think the GM Equinox and the Blazer, if they can build them and maintain the pricing that they've announced, I think those could be winners for General Motors. But I think the Model Y will still continue to sell well in 2024 for Tesla in the US. Help me out, man. I can't think of the Mach-E needs a refresh for sure. We're already seeing demand wane for that.
Yeah. At least from the US EV startup environment, Rivian seems to be doing a lot better compared to Lucid, right?
Oh man,
and compared to
Lucid can't build 1,000 cars a month.
Yeah, because Rivian, even in this little town in Western Massachusetts, I've been seeing a lot of Rivians. So that kind of tells you where the market is, where the American consumer right?
That also tells me another thing, Lei, that you live in a pretty hoity-toity part of town because Rivians are not cheap.
No, I mean, this is like a college town that I live in, and I don't know.
But you know what I mean, right? You're not seeing Rivians
Yeah.
in like super urban areas where the average sales price of a vehicle is much lower, right? So
Yeah, because almost like I drive my daughter to school sometimes in the morning and back, and often see these Rivians, the SUVs and the pickups.
they're quite striking. I do like them. They've aged well because the design is effectively 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah, and then speaking of the products that are coming in the US, right? So 2025 and after is also a good time point because like Rivian, they're coming out with a smaller SUV, right? R2S,
Yep.
something that could be more appealing to the mass consumers.
And will fill out the volume
Yeah.
at the factory.
Right. And then when the point of sale rebate kicks in, how that will help remains to be seen. And how much you get based on the IRA language. Still not clear.
My prediction is by the end of Q1, we shall see much more clarity when it comes to what is in, what is out, what is considered friendly, and whether or not those end arounds, for instance, the LG BYD cell partnership in Seoul.
The Polestar Busan plant.
Yep.
That's Geely holding resources, basically, to avoid the tariff, right?
Because right now, Polestar is a single market brand. It doesn't sell that well in China. I think the 4 and the 3 will do well in China, but currently the 2 only really sells in high volumes in Europe.
Yeah. So the 4 is slotted between the 2 and 3. So that's one interesting positioning. And then in terms of volumes, right? Polestar had 290,000 aimed for 2025. That is cut in half. That was announced a couple of days ago.
We also have to remind the audience that Volvo was never a huge volume sales manufacturer until Geely acquired them. So,
and Volvo is revealing the EM90
yeah.
MPV on Sunday.
Oh, and how could I forget? Because this week the EX30 had gotten a lot of good press in the US.
Yeah.
So but again, that's going to be built initially in China and imported to the US. So Volvo is going to have to eat the entirety of that 27.5% tariff in order to keep the EX30 down below 50 grand.
Yeah. Well, the Polestar 3 were made in South Carolina, and the 4 will be made in Busan for the American market. So that'll help a little bit. But
here's the thing, Lei, and this is that clarity that we're asking for, right? It's going to be built in South Carolina using envisioned AESC batteries with rare earth metals from countries and refined in China. So how much of that subsidy is it going to get? Likely not all 7,500. Maybe though. I don't know. That's the $1 million question, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Unfortunately, it has become a little bit political in the United States, and so there's a lot more questioning and inquisitiveness about where these brands are actually from. We've seen a lot of articles. You've been quoted. I've been quoted in recent articles about where's MG? What is MG? What is Polestar? What is Volvo? And 2 weeks ago, you and I were in New York for Zeekr, and maybe you can talk a little bit about their IPO.
Yeah, I mean that's the mad dash for Zeekr itself, right? I mean that event preceding basically IPO coming in the next days or weeks, and we knew about it, right? That was pretty much public because they put out statements earlier this year. But I mean Zeekr was, I think in their prospectus, this is a 6-year-old brand, and really a brand that kind of shot up during the pandemic because they started deliveries in October 2021. And 2 years later, they're launching an IPO in the US. And one of many potential Geely IPOs coming, if not in the US and globally.
So Li Shufu is trying to do two things. He's trying to extract value, and he's trying to make it easier to raise capital to further invest in these brands. I think that he's going to run into long term. He's going to run into a too many brands problem, and a lot of that has to do with all of the brands are sold in China, with the exception of the taxi brand also sells in China, right? The London Taxi?
I think so. I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So, which makes sense because every single brand is manufactured in China. But as you and I know, a GM, a Volkswagen Group, they know how difficult it is to manage 6, 8, or Stellantis now too, 8, 12, 10, 12 brands, especially when for Geely, and we know that, and I'm not saying that all these consumer or these market segments overlap, but if you're looking at a Lotus Electra, you might also be looking at an EX90, a Volvo EX90, and you also might be looking at a Polestar 3. And for the individual brands, that sucks. But for Geely, they have much higher chance of selling a vehicle to a consumer because of those 3 brands. But if I'm a Polestar employee or a Volvo employee or a Lotus employee, I'm like, what are we doing here? So it'll be interesting to see how they reconcile the positioning of each of these brands. Because you and I know, because we've been following them for so long, Polestar's the performance, Volvo's kind of the safe vehicle, and then Lotus obviously is kind of a British heritage niche brand that they're trying to turn into a volume seller. So
yeah, but with respect to the Zeekr IPO, I think they're putting 2 things out in the front that will face scrutiny. The IPO itself, and 2, the Zeekr's entry into the US via the Waymo route. I mean, those 2 things are going to get a lot of scrutiny.
This on the heels of Yellen and He meeting this week, and then President Biden and Xi Jinping meeting in San Francisco. So I had planned some meetings because you and I will be meeting in LA on next Wednesday. But I had planned some meetings in San Francisco, and I've kind of reassessed, and most of my meetings are now in South Bay, in San Jose and Sunnyvale. So I kind of want to stay out of San Francisco because it's going to be a shit show probably. So
yeah. Did you sign up for that $2,000 dinner?
I did not. I mean, these conference
$4,000.
These conference freaking costs are ridiculous, man. So especially and we have some friends at Reuters, especially the Reuters conferences. Like there was this conference. Remember you sent that to me like a month ago? It was like $3,000 to go to this freaking conference in Detroit. So
yeah, I think I saw some headlines coming out of that from Ganesh talking about assessing the U.S. market entry.
Yep.
But I mean, that's been going on since whenever, since two years ago.
Yeah, we talked about that with him a couple of years ago. So
yeah, 25 by 2025. So and then there's the other talk about that Alps brand being kind of integrated into NIO. I personally believe that Alps brand will still launch as a second brand.
It has to.
Yeah, the way how it will be done organizationally may be different than before. I think that's where the cost cutting comes into play.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because the phone just launched, and so that might, in Chinese speed terms, because a lot of potential employees might get got on the phone side for NIO, maybe we don't see updates at the velocity that we would normally see if they had kind of a healthy team, a full team working that phone. So a few of these products that I thought they were going to try to hang their hat on might not be part of the future of NIO. So that'll be interesting to see too.
Yeah.
Because as you know, Lei, if you're going to compete with with Apple, with Xiaomi, Oppo, and I'm not saying the NIO phone is an Oppo phone. Let me just say that. But Xiaomi from a mobile handset standpoint is pretty premium in China market. So it's pretty cutthroat, almost as cutthroat as the EV sector in China.
Yeah, so this phone play is coming into more, let's say, will be more crowded because of Neo phone, what it does with the Neo ecosystem. So Polestar is launching a phone with Meizu, Xingji Meizu, which is a Li Shufu company. And then Xiaomi, it'll be interesting what Xiaomi does with their when they launch their EV or their existing, because they have that Hyper OS, right?
Yeah.
So you would think that they gotta be doing the same, if not more, as what Neo is doing with their phone and the cars.
And then you bring in Jiyue with the Geely tie-up and Baidu. So there's a logical mobile handset play there. And we also know that because Jiyue has dialed up the digital and AI features on their vehicle, Xiaomi needs to bring the heat next year on the feature side. Otherwise, it's just not going to be taken very seriously, the vehicle. I mean, so.
Yeah. So quickly on the CAM numbers, basically, I my prediction, really the suspense the remaining of the year is a 1 million unit month, a 3 million unit quarter, and by all, I believe it's going to be over 9 million. There's no question about it.
Including exports.
Including exports. So the 7.28 million in the first 10 months is already more than all of 2022. And if they do 3 million in the Q4, it'll be almost as what China sold the entire year 2021.
Right.
That's the perspective, or put it into perspective how the market is growing.
So we should have a good indication of how Shuri plays out in the next couple of weeks. The car makers will have a good indication in the next couple of days. And on December 1st, we'll likely see another round of incentives to have December finish out strong for all of these automakers.
No doubt.
So one of the things we should also mention is that in January of 2023, 10 months ago or 11 months ago, year started off with a bang. Tesla cut prices, and that kept the sector going. Now, if this mad dash is going to happen like you and I think it will be, there's going to be a lull, a huge lull in January, February, on top of the already seasonal nature of the slowness of the first quarter of any year.
Sure.
So that means that the price war should continue well into 2024, at least the first half of 2024. And we have to look at the real estate sector in China and the overall economy. And there's going to be increasing pressure for excess capacity to be shipped to Latin America, Southeast Asia, and Europe primarily.
Yeah, lots of factors at play.
Yeah. So, what else do we want to talk about?
I'm looking at my my list of headlines, and I'm keeping up a list every day of what's been happening, and it's hard to keep up.
Yeah. What was your most notable tweets this week?
I tweeted quite a lot.
I know you did.
the IPO, the Polestar Day stuff, right? The Li Auto earnings. We talked a little bit about Li Auto earnings. What they're trying to do.
So their share price reflects the strength of their sales.
Yeah,
they surprised analysts in Q3. They were at 125,000 units or something like that.
In Q3, they were over 100,000.
Yeah, 105. Sorry, 105,000.
Yeah.
And this is across 3 products.
Yeah,
with the 7 and 8.
7, 8, 9.
Getting the 7 and 8 getting the lion's share of the sales. We should also note that Tesla has opened up their supercharging network to Buick in China. So
Buick and Cadillac, I believe.
Yes, sorry, Cadillac too. So basically GM, because effectively Chevrolet does not have any real EVs in the China market. So
that's probably going to open the floodgates, like what's happening here with the NACS.
Yes. But if I was GM, I would have negotiated an exclusive for 12 months to get ahead of everybody else. Because as you know, Buick, Mary had stated that before 2025 or by 2025, GM will have launched 10 electric vehicles off the Ultium platform for the China market.
Yeah.
So this is an incremental win for Tesla, but it's a huge opportunity for GM in the China market. So I think this was pretty wise. Now, they were likely having this discussion with GM already because they've opened up charging station superchargers in the US. So this is not, I don't think this was a separate discussion, but maybe they needed to hand it over to the local Shanghai GM folks to close it out.
Yeah.
So let me see. What did I read about let me ask you this. What do you think about the Fangcheng Bao 5? And how should we call it? Should we call it the Fangcheng Bao 5 or Fangcheng Bao? I can't stop saying it.
Well, it's the Bao 5.
The Bao 5.
So,
okay.
Yeah. If you look at these recent launches, so Avatar 1, 2 being an example, the magic or the psychological pricing point is this 300,000 RMB pricing point.
Which you and I have always kind of drawn that line too.
Yeah, and the Bao 5 is starting below 300,000. And that model, I think, has Li Auto directly. I mean, even though it's more macho, more off-roady, that segment, right, the kind of, price-wise or size-wise, shape-wise, is pretty competitive.
And remember that there are unintended consequences of doing certain things, and going under 300,000 from a starting price pulls in so many other competitors. And so you might be targeting one or two particular brands or particular products, but at that 300,000 and below, let's say 200 to 300,000 price point, there are a lot of valid products, right?
Yeah, and the XPeng X9 is going to fall in that category.
Yes.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they come out with a very aggressive, I guess it would be pre-sale pricing if they do announce it, in the 300,000 range. I can't see it go above 400,000.
And you saw that Tony Leung is going to be the spokesperson for Avatar. So
yeah,
because my wife watches a lot of these movies, and so she's
wasn't he also like Audi or Cadillac?
I think so,
ambassador or something.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, Tony Leung is a huge Hong Kong star, mainland Chinese star, and for the Western folks, he was Shang-Chi's dad in the Shang-Chi movie. So
yeah, right. Yeah.
So super famous guy. So it's him. It's like Andy Lau and like two or three other guys.
Yeah, he was in that movie Wu Jiandao with Andy Lau. Yeah.
So there's like two or three really old Hong Kong actors that look like they're 40, but they're closer to 60. That do all of the advertisement for the Chinese marketing. So, anyways, but and one thing that I will tell you guys about that we forgot to mention earlier, Lei, is there's a great article in the Wall Street Journal this week about Toyota and their challenges with software and how they had established a division called Woven Planet, which was akin to Volkswagen Group's CarYat. So for those that are wondering how hard...
That was like announced a few years ago at CES, I remember.
Yeah.
Like 2018 or 2019.
For those that think that software is a one-off Volkswagen Group challenge, read this article. It is a foreign legacy. Well, just say legacy. I'll pull out the description foreign. It's a legacy auto bugaboo that will force brands, not car companies, but certain brands to close their doors within the next 10 years. Software is not going to be something that they're going to get good at in a 5-year period time frame. So, Lei, I would equate the challenge with software. And Afonso, you're European. You know how difficult software is for European companies. So I'll equate what the legacy auto needs to do is like, Lei, you're amazing at fabricating things, right? Building desks, now you need to make a computer, and you need to do it you need to be really good at it in a 5-7 year time frame. Good enough so that you can compete against Google, against Didi, against Apple. Now, how impossible of a task is that? So don't underestimate how difficult it is to become good at software.
No, I was just going to say that since the 3 months have come back, whatever I tested out in China, they feel old because there have been a lot of updates.
Yeah.
And that's only 3 months.
So do have a comment here. Your thoughts on Zeekr's IPO timing? Seems like a tough period for those. ARM, and in Europe, Ampere, Renault's EV pure player, to be IPOing. This is from Antoine Davion. So thoughts, Lei?
I don't know. I mean, this is not. I think this has been in
The works.
In the works, probably for, if not for a year.
Oh, 2 years.
Or yeah, and I think this, when they launched this many years ago, this probably was the aim at the end of the day, that a performance EV brand competing, let's say the Porsches, right? The timing, I don't know. I mean, it's right before the Shibai meeting, and hopefully that'll.
I look at this from a timing standpoint as there's no better time than the present. Who knows? Because remember that 2024, we're in an election year. So the atmosphere for an IPO by a Chinese company could actually get worse.
If you look at the prospectus and the statement put out by Geely, Hong Kong listed Geely, Geely Auto, there was that big disclaimer or kind of the forward-looking statement at the very beginning, which mentions these factors, the geopolitical factors.
Yeah, I actually think I think the time now is better than potentially 6 months from now, specifically as we get closer to November, which is when the presidential election is going to be in the United States. Now, I think they are fairly conservative on what they want as a valuation, but we'll see. I think there's going to be enough Western investors that have an interest in Zeekr. I think they did a decent job or a pretty good job of showing off their products on that short US tour that they did last week that included Lei and I. So, man, people are capitalists in the West. So if they...
Maybe the more broad question to ask is the China-US relationship, has it hit rock bottom and is it climbing out? Maybe that's the question, right?
Yes.
And whether that'll help, in some way.
I am still in a number of groups on messaging with friends in China, Shanghai, Beijing, Shenzhen, and we were openly talking about this because we do know the Chinese economy is down. We know the U.S. economy, with the exception of interest rates, is up. And so this creates a different dynamic for the U.S.-China relationship. There's also a good article in the Wall Street Journal about that and how the U.S. is concerned about exports because of the currency being so cheap, and China is concerned about the high interest rates on the U.S. side. So there's ways to cooperate, and you and I believe, Lei, talking is better than not talking. So
right. I mean, that's engagement. Yeah.
Hold on a second. We got one more comment. Have any possibility about Zeekr producing in South Korea? So you know that the Polestar South Korea thing, Lei, is that a Geely thing or is that a Polestar thing?
Yes, that's a joint venture, with Geely being one of the three. I think that's a joint venture between Geely, Samsung, and Renault.
Right.
I believe. So, yeah.
So, surely there's a distinct possibility that Polestars get built in China or in Seoul or Korea anyways, because we will know more in Q1 of 2024 whether or not those vehicles will get Inflation Reduction Act love.
Yeah. I think for the time being, the Zeekrs will be made in Ningbo.
Yes.
Including the robotaxi, and shipped out.
So the reason I say that is because in Ningbo, the GYue01, the Polestar 4, and one other car, a Lotus Electra, are all built off the same line because they're all using the same platform, the SEA platform.
Yeah, SEA, yeah.
So it's not, that's why I asked you, Lei, is this a Geely joint venture or is this a Polestar joint venture? Because a Polestar.
It's a Geely joint venture.
Yeah, so this opens the door. And you better believe that Geely will move into more than one brand if that joint venture is able to get some Inflation Reduction Act love. So
yeah, so that's there. That plays there.
And it's an open question because all the people that I talk to have no clue. So so that tells me that the U.S. government is still trying to analyze what makes the most sense. So hey, Lei, that's all I have, buddy. We will talk with everyone soon. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Thank you all for joining. Bye-bye.
That brings us to the end of this week's show. Lei and I thank you for tuning in. My name is Tu Li, and you can find me on Twitter at Sino Auto Insight. That's SinoAutoInsight. You can find Lei on Twitter at LeiXing77. That's LEIXING77. If you wouldn't mind rating and or reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you grab your podcast from, we'd appreciate that as well. Even better, if you enjoy this show, please tell your friends about it. Please join us again next week as we track down all the latest news on China, EVs, and more.